I paid to renovate our kitchen. While I was away, my in-laws repainted it, tore out my fixtures, and said it looked too feminine. I walked in, looked around, took one photo, and reached for the paper they forgot to notice because I'm 42 now. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I've been married to Mark for nearly 10 years. We don't have kids, but we've built a life together, or so I thought. For the past few years, I'd been saving up for one big project, renovating our outdated kitchen. It was dark, cramped, and stuck in the 90s with oak cabinets and old laminate counters. I cook a lot. It's my therapy after 12-hour shifts as a trauma nurse. That kitchen had become the one part of the house I hated being in. So when I got a small inheritance from my grandmother, around $27,000, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Mark and I had talked about it before, and he always said, "When you're ready, we'll make it happen." But I didn't want to use our joint money. I used my inheritance and a work bonus to cover the whole thing. He didn't put in a penny. He didn't even go to the contractor meetings. I planned every detail. I chose sage green cabinets, white quartz countertops, a white farmhouse sink, antique brass handles, soft lighting, and open shelving to display my late grandma's ceramic dishes. It took 6 weeks to finish. I cried when it was done. It felt like mine, not just because I paid for it, but because I built it piece by piece. Then came the in-laws. Mark's mom, Sharon, and his dad, Greg, came to visit 2 days after the renovation wrapped up. They walked in and immediately looked off. Sharon narrowed her eyes like she was examining a scratch on a new car. Greg just grunted. "This feels like something from a woman's blog," he muttered. Sharon didn't hold back. "It's soft," she said. "Are you planning to sell makeup in here? Or do men live here too?" I laughed it off at the time. Tried not to let it stick. But it did. The words clung to me, especially Sharon's tone. I knew she didn't respect me. She never had. To her, I was the woman who took Mark away. She once told me flat out that she thought nurses were just overpaid waitresses in scrubs. I never forgot that. Fast forward 2 months later. I got invited to speak at a nursing seminar in San Diego. 4 days, hotel covered, meals paid for. Mark encouraged me to go. He said he'd miss me but could use the alone time. I left early Thursday morning. We texted here and there while I was gone. Nothing seemed off. When I got home Sunday evening, the second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air felt cold. Stale. The lighting was harsh, not warm. I walked into the kitchen and just froze. My beautiful sage cabinets were now a sterile gray blue. The brass handles replaced with matte black ones. The open shelving was gone. They put up closed cabinets in their place. Cheap ones, not even the same quality. My farmhouse sink? Gone. Replaced by a generic stainless steel model. The pendant lights I spent weeks picking out had been swapped for something out of a corporate office. I couldn't speak. Sharon and Greg were sitting at the kitchen table like they owned the place. Sharon beamed at me. "Surprise," she said, like this was some home makeover show. Mark was standing behind them, arms crossed, eyes on the floor. Sharon went on, "We thought it needed a little balance. It was just too feminine before. This is something we can all be proud of." All I could say was, "What happened?" Mark shrugged. "It just didn't feel right. We thought you'd understand." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took one single photo of the new kitchen. Then I walked calmly to the hall closet and pulled out the gray folder marked renovation. Inside was every document, invoices, signed contracts, receipts, permits, all in my name. Every dollar, every decision. Meaning, what they didn't know was that 2 months earlier, I had also filed paperwork with a real estate attorney. Because when I used my inheritance to pay off part of the mortgage, I had it legally documented that a portion of the house was mine alone. We weren't in a community property state. The paperwork made it clear. I had invested in this house personally, and that kitchen was part of that. They never looked for any of that. They just walked in and ripped apart something they didn't pay for, didn't plan, and didn't own. I turned back into the kitchen and looked at them. Really looked at them. Sharon with her smug little smirk. Greg pretending he hadn't just violated someone else's home. And Mark, my husband, standing there like a child caught stealing. I said one sentence. You just made a huge mistake. Mark frowned. It's not a big deal. We just made it better. I didn't argue. I smiled. That's the moment something inside me shifted. I knew then that this wasn't about a kitchen. It never was. This was about control. About erasing me. And I was done playing nice. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Mark, listening to him breathe like nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling and ran through every memory, every warning sign I'd brushed off over the years. Mark was never cruel. That was the trick. He wasn't the type to yell or cheat. But he had this quiet way of folding into whatever his parents wanted, even as a grown man pushing 40. If Sharon disapproved of something, eventually he did too. The next morning, I said nothing. I made coffee, walked through my destroyed kitchen, and acted like everything was fine. I waited, because I needed to see what they'd do next. The first red flag came 2 days later. I got home from work to find Sharon there again. She was reorganizing the new cabinets. She didn't even look embarrassed. Just trying to help, sweetheart. I didn't stop her. I watched. Then she said something that sealed everything for me. You should have asked us from the start. You were always going to get it wrong. I knew right then this wasn't going to stop. That weekend, I had lunch with my friend Marcy, a real estate paralegal. I showed her the kitchen photo. She said, "You need to get out before they take more." We pulled up the documents I had signed months before. She confirmed what I already suspected, since I had paid for the renovation with separate funds, and since I had the agreement in writing tied to my inheritance and the home equity investment, I had a clear legal trail. Then I asked her a question I hadn't wanted to ask before. If I filed for divorce, what happens to the kitchen? To my money? She answered honestly. That depends. But you've got leverage. More than most people do. When I got home that night, I tried to talk to Mark. I laid it out. I paid for that kitchen. You had no right to change anything without talking to me. He didn't apologize. He shrugged. It's just a kitchen, Danielle. You're blowing this out of proportion. I asked him, why did you let them do it? He said, they were trying to help. You should be grateful. I felt something crack in me. Gratitude? For ripping out the thing I'd worked on for over a year? I said, you weren't trying to help. You were trying to erase me from this house. He snapped then. You've always made everything about you. This isn't just your house. But that was the thing, parts of it were. I'd made sure of that. After that conversation, I stopped pretending. I contacted the original contractor and asked for a new quote, how much it would cost to restore what was torn out. He said it wouldn't be cheap. Some of the materials were discontinued. But he said something else. You still have the receipts and specs. If someone damaged this without your permission, that's not just personal. That's potentially criminal. He offered to put everything in writing. The next week, Sharon showed up again, this time with a new rug for the living room. The place needed a man's touch, she said with a laugh. I didn't smile. I didn't take the rug. I told her, you're not welcome in this house anymore. She blinked, then laughed like I was joking. Mark says this is his home too. I said, then he can visit your house. She didn't laugh after that. Later that night, Mark said I was being unfair. I reminded him I had the receipts, the contract, the home equity investment documents, all in my name. I said, you let your parents bulldoze my work. That has consequences. Mark didn't believe me. He thought I was bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. And the next thing I did proved it. The next thing I did was call a locksmith. While Mark was at work, I changed the locks. I gave notice to his parents in writing, certified mail, that they were not permitted to enter the home without my written consent. I included a copy of the deed update and renovation contracts. Sharon signed for the letter. So I knew she got it. That night, Mark tried his key. It didn't work. He banged on the door for 15 minutes. I opened it calm. He said, what the hell is this? I said, boundaries. He tried to push past me. I blocked the door. I'm not locking you out, I said. I'm locking them out. He looked stunned, then furious. They're my parents. I told him. They don't live here. And they're not coming back.
He left.
I knew where he went. Straight to Sharon's. 2 days later, I got served. Mark had filed for legal separation. Not divorce. Separation. I wasn't surprised. Sharon was probably behind it. Filing separation first on paper made it look like I was the one causing a disruption. It also froze some of our shared accounts. I couldn't believe it. This man, who said I was his partner, had let his parents bulldoze my kitchen and now was trying to make me the villain. But here's the twist. They made a mistake. Because Mark had filed first, he had to disclose all assets, including debts. His financial declaration showed something I didn't know. He had taken out a personal loan 6 months earlier. A big one. Over $25,000. Supposedly for home improvement. Only I had already paid for the kitchen. That money didn't go into our house. It went into a secret account. I brought this to my lawyer. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what this looks like, right?"
Yes. Fraud.
He'd taken out a loan and possibly funneled it into a shared project to make it look like he contributed, then erased my work and claimed we did it together. Worse, the contractor Sharon used to redo my kitchen? He was a friend of hers. Not licensed. Not insured. The work had already caused a slow leak under the new sink. I documented everything. I had receipts, emails, photos, contractor names, inspection reports, texts, even Sharon's comments about my kitchen being too feminine. And then another twist came. The local inspector I hired for a quote on the water damage? He recognized the name of Sharon's contractor. Yeah, I know him. He got sued last year for botching a sunroom and disappearing before fixing it. Now I had it all. Unauthorized demolition. Financial fraud. Water damage from unlicensed work. And a paper trail that pointed to Sharon, and by extension Mark. That's when I stopped waiting. I filed for divorce. And I didn't go quietly. I filed for divorce exactly 1 week after finding out about the loan. Mark didn't see it coming. He was still trying to play both sides, acting like we just needed space, like this was a rough patch. But I was done. I didn't just want out. I wanted everything I was owed. My lawyer filed a motion to bring in all financial disclosures, including Mark's home improvement loan. We also submitted the contractor invoices I had paid, 100% from my account, and a detailed damage report from the inspector showing the leak caused by Sharon's fake contractor. It didn't take long before the case turned ugly. In mediation, Mark tried to argue that the second kitchen renovation was a joint decision. My lawyer pulled out Sharon's handwritten project timeline that she'd smugly posted on Facebook weeks earlier. It listed every change she made, complete with captions like, "Got rid of that silly gold hardware. Looks like a woman's jewelry box." That social media post did more damage to their case than anything I said. The mediator read it, then looked at the photos. Then asked Mark if he understood that tearing out someone else's paid property, without their consent, could be considered vandalism, especially if it caused damage. Mark's lawyer pulled him out of the room. A week later, he came back with a settlement offer. He wanted me to drop the fraud claim, accept the separation, and give him the house because it was his family home. I declined. I wanted my kitchen rebuilt. I wanted Sharon banned from the property. And I wanted repayment for damages, plus half the funds from the personal loan. I wasn't bluffing. I told my lawyer to prepare for court. 2 days before our hearing, Mark folded. He signed over his share of the house.
Full title to me.
He gave up claim to any of the remaining joint assets, bank accounts, furniture, everything. He even agreed to repay part of the loan on his own, since it hadn't been used for shared property. Sharon showed up the next morning, trying to talk to me outside my driveway. She said, "You've ruined everything. You turned Mark against us." I said, "No. You did that when you tore out my kitchen and tried to erase me from my own home." She glared at me, then asked, "Why do you even want the house now?" I smiled. "Because now it's mine. And you're trespassing." I walked away and called the police. I didn't press charges, but I made sure a report was filed. just in case. It took me another 8 months and a second contractor, but I rebuilt the kitchen the way I wanted. Same sage cabinets. Same farmhouse sink. Same open shelves. I even found another set of antique brass fixtures on eBay. And that one photo I took the moment I walked back into the ruined kitchen, I framed it. I keep it inside a drawer in the hallway behind my renovation folder. Not as a reminder of what they did, but of what I took back. They tried to turn me into a guest in my own home. Instead, I kicked them all out and kept the house.